Welcome back to the DNA Pest Control Podcast. Daniel speaking on this end.
Aaron speaking on the other end.
Nice. So we are not in the studio today.
No, we're doing a remote recording.
Remote recording, testing it out. Let's see how this works. Always fun.
Yeah.
So today's going to be a fun one. Aaron's going to take the reins today and guide us through this episode, especially because and we try to keep all episodes very relevant and what's going on um, as soon as we can. We don't like to do an episode, if it's been something in the past. We like to keep everything as close to now as possible, what we're going through, what we're seeing, what's happening, and bringing you that information in hopes that it helps you in your day to day. And so, kind of, this episode ties into what we've been going through really, really recently.
Yeah. Agreed.
And so, what is that, Aaron? Take us away.
Okay. So, we've been talking a lot about growth in 2024 and talking a lot about the personnel stuff and the culture side of it and the safety and everything kind of more on the back end. But I really wanted to dive into the commercial and the apartment services, more of those specialty accounts, some of those high dollar amounts on the specialty services that you might have a specialized technician for, a specialized team for, but kind of wanted to go through how to execute, not only getting these accounts on, but actually starting services and retaining those services after the initial contract and kind of what that looks like from your average pest control company who's checking boxes versus somebody who's going above and beyond, at least from what we've done that's worked and what we've done that has sucked, so I kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, and let's start. Let's start with what those mediocre services look like.
Yeah, well, I kind of broke it down in like a timeline, right? So some of you guys listening out there may not have a ton of like larger apartment or commercial or storage unit restaurant type accounts, but um, we kind of wanted to break down actually getting in on a cold lead and getting your face and getting your name in front of those people in the first place. And before we get into the actual services on what an average company does versus what is like an elite company would do, I think a lot of people are intimidated just to go in and have a conversation with people about the services that they're getting or the services that they might want. I know that you've told me in the past, which has helped. It's no secret why we're there. We have the company logo on. We're coming in a truck. I'm very straightforward, not in an aggressive way, but in a way that just shows I'm not planning to waste any time for my time and their time. I'm going in asking, hey, we're set up as a vendor with your property management company. Who do you guys currently use for pest control? And let the conversation flow.
hmm
Um, you also hit this on the head too about trying not to focus on what the company is doing, instead focus on what the actual property company or business wants from a pest control company and see how we can bridge that gap. That's been kind of the easiest and most surefire way of getting into all these properties and all the growth that we've seen is keeping it as simple as like, what do you guys need done here? You know?
Yeah, and I'll chime in on that. Is so many people in pest control, and where I came from outside the industry. I didn't come into pest control being, my parents didn't do pest control. I barely even knew pest control existed before I got into it. So when I got into pest control, I looked at it as what are companies doing that are kind of weird, and what do we need to do different to cover those needs? And some stuff didn't make sense, some stuff made sense what companies were doing. And that's a big thing for anybody who's trying to step into commercial accounts. Now after we've done some really big ones and some of these even, smaller ones, it's just education. You just need to educate yourself in scenarios and situations And it's not that scary of a beast. The bigger the building doesn't mean it's necessarily more difficult. There's just more steps to take care of it.
Right.
you know, and just a little bit, being a little bit more thorough. But, stepping into the apartments and what set us apart, from that beginning, and why I've talked about it so much is, asking exactly that. Most guys get into apartment complexes because they know somebody or they know the manager, they're close to that person or whatever it may be, and they get in, but they don't really actually take care of the needs of the person. And it's always fun when we come behind them and say, hey, what do you need? What
Hmm.
do you need us to do? And then we just slide right in. I don't care what your company's doing. I don't even care what they're charging, because what you need may be more or less expensive. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been sort of against the whole price pissing contest that just doesn't really do anybody good at the end, anyways, you know?
Mm-hmm. And talking and hitting that, and for these listeners, and this one hit really hard for me. I mean, it hit hard. And I just read this, which was kind of cool, and this is where we talk about price, and we'll jump back into, I know we're kind of getting a little bit off, but when it is the price talk or we're hitting the price point, there was someone who asked Lamborghini, and they said, why don't you guys do commercials? And Lamborghini responded, because our target audience isn't sitting around watching TV, right?
Yeah.
And it hits pretty hard. But that's what people have to, in the pest control world, and we've talked about it, we have to get back out of that. Is just because you offer something for a very low price doesn't mean the person needs it, that company needs it, that apartment complex needs it, or even wants it. Don't assume cheap is better or a lower price is a better service. That's not what any of that means. And so when you're getting into these apartment complexes, keep that in mind. Is the target person you're after may not be that cheap, you know, little complex that's, just trying to nickel and dime every little thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's where you get into these companies where we come in and we actually take, we essentially sweep it right out from underneath them, and they have
Mm.
no idea why. And it's not because we're cheaper. We're just going to do a better job.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. At least from firsthand experience, there's a lot of common themes, whether it's the lack of consistency on services or it's the lack of flexibility on requested services. Whether it's specialty treatments, inspections, or random, freak callbacks that they need us there immediately. I mean, when we're really breaking down, at least from my experience, what a commercial property needs from a pest control company, it's pretty straightforward if you listen. And that was kind of the point of why I wanted to go over the estimate side of it and actually getting into those properties, because it's not this massive beast that people make it out to be. It's just you have to be, detail oriented and understand that each property is probably going to require something a little bit different, and if you can match those needs, then you're in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and the cool thing is at least in our situation, is everyone's like, we'll say, well, simple's better, keep it very simple, keep it very easy. And it really is. You just customize and tweak just very little stuff. It's not that each property is this massive difference in services. They just need something a little bit different. And you're going to focus and tailor that service and put in the notes, this is what they need and this is what they want. The next one doesn't care about those things, so this is what they need and this is what they want. And it's really simple because it's doing what we do. We just doing a little bit more of that one thing for that, specific building. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. But going from the actual estimate itself, we'll probably have a couple other more in-depth sales episode. I don't want to go too deep into it. But the next step in that would be actually getting on that account. And, I wanted to talk about the importance of accurately getting them set up and whatever system software you use internally or whatever you're using between these property managers or between these customers. At least from my experience, I've seen the clearer you are from the very beginning, not only with the customer, but also with your team and your staff to ensure that the services are being done as they were sold is very crucial because it's a lot of small, minute errors that can go under the rug that can destroy a lot of potential opportunities and relationships in something you just got into. You know,
Yeah, no. I see that. I mean, and when you are putting that in, we have, one very recent is we actually had um, a property management company sell off one of their buildings, and we were vendors for the next one that they sold them to. And so it was an easier transition, but we had to make sure that the billing information was changed, that the name of the apartment was changed, that the manager's information was changed, where the invoices are going are changed. Are we compliant in their, vendor portal and things like that? And so you do have to keep up on that and pay attention to those things because it can slip through the cracks and then you're sending invoices to a past company and they're not getting anything new, or you're not being a solid guide to bringing them into, hey, look, you're new and we've been here. We're the old ones here. We're the experienced ones here. You're the new ones here. Let us help you and show you what we can do or what we're doing and bringing them up to speed.
yeah, exactly. I mean, even another one, a company or a property we're currently on now. I was having a conversation with the manager about, when we got them on service about a year and a half ago. I didn't know this, but she said the reason they switched, at least for that property itself, was because the last company they had got there at different times on their scheduled Friday appointments. So this property was set up for regular Friday appointments, but one week, their guys would get there at 9 a.m. The next week they get there at 3:30 p.m. They'd get there like on a Saturday, just doing whatever, and there was no communication there. And the simple fact of putting in the correct time frames and routing it correctly, helped them jump on service a lot quicker. And it sounds so simple, but sometimes that's all it takes. Just a little bit of organization on the back end.
Yeah, well, but usually that's a hard thing to do, especially for smaller, and I'm speaking from experience. I'm not saying this against anyone because we were super small too, right? I mean, we were tiny. There was three of us, two of us at one point, and it's tough. It's tough, the communication and the consistency that you have to stay on, to keep up with it because it can be difficult on a small scale. It's one person running it or one person in the office, and you're so small. You say, well, how do I keep that line of communication up as well, or the consistency there? And you do have to choose priorities, but you have to pay attention and focus on those things, and it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's just little by little, but those, for anyone who's getting into it or looking at it, it's, be prepared to put in a lot of time, you know, and it will pay off as you're doing it, but you do have to be that consistent. You're going in from the estimate to actually setting them up into the account and providing all that information. That consistent contact is so crucial. Even here, what we say is hey, a new customer takes priority, not because an old customer doesn't necessarily, but the new customer, that first impression is so crucial. And it's even more crucial when it comes to apartment complex because you get in good with them now, you're in good with them for years.
Yeah.
And they're going to look past one or two mistakes. They're not going to care if you make mistakes. And it's going to be so difficult for somebody to come behind you and take them away because you're already open and ready to change or do extra things or help them out. And the communication's there, so it is a crucial thing, but making sure that is all inside their system, whatever system you use, like you said, and keeping those notes in order and what they need and what they want.
Definitely. Definitely. Before we move into the actual initial service and regular services, I want to touch on one more thing on the office and admin side of it. Something that's worked really well for us on the business side is setting proper contacts, not only for them, but for us as well. I know you did mention, we were very small at one point, but we are at a point now where we do have an office admin. There's you in the office as well. I'm on the road with, a plethora of technicians. So we took another step when we started going to these property managers or these businesses and telling them, hey, me out in the field, I am your point of contact for pest identification, specific pest issues. However, if you have any billing, any scheduling, you know what I mean, any routing questions like that, it goes directly to the office. This is the person you want to talk to. And it really cleaned things up for us to be as effective as possible instead of just a jumbled mess of messages going to the wrong people to get relayed back and forth. Just something that really helped us on our end in executing at a higher level was making it hard for them to make mistakes by giving it the information to the wrong person. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But with that, transitioning into the actual initial service itself, going into the regular services once that's completed, you made a point on, first impressions are huge. And first impressions when you're actually there on site are even more crucial, in my opinion. Whatever software system you're using, at least the one that we use, it allows us to put in permanent customer notes where the office, any technician on that job site, they can see the preset notes for that appointment. I would assume that most pest software companies have that option, but the importance of clarity and communication with your guys or your team who are going to be performing those services is huge. At least the way we've done it, we've usually had a technician manager or the person who has done the estimate, who sold the project or the job in the first place, go with the technician who's going to be, doing that service on a monthly or, bi-monthly basis to make sure that things are being done as they were sold. I
Yeah.
think that, I mean, we even saw it here. We were firing off on a lot of sales and things were great. Everyone was happy, high fiving, and some of the quality control kind of slipped under the rug. And 6, 8 months later, we find out that an apartment had bait stations that weren't even checked for the past couple services, but they marked that they were
Mm-hmm.
checked, and it really helped me learn the importance of actually conveying the importance of what needs to be done every single time in front of the technician, in front of the manager, setting that standard straight from the very beginning.
Yeah. No, and that it is so crucial, in managers listening in on this, owners listening in on this, anybody who's growing their, pest control company, technicians who are just running a route listening to this. You know, you will get away with missing a thing or two here and there. Um, it eventually will catch up to you and you will lose properties. And for the regular route tech, you losing properties means you lose a job
Hmm.
because the company's shrinking, it's not growing. So we think, we're trying to take a shortcut here or there. We're going to skip one bait station. I checked it last time. Who cares? All of those little things start to add up to a big thing. Whether it's, they end up firing you because you just are skipping little stuff consistently and it starts to pile up to a massive thing. But also for the managers, it's what quality control is getting done and are we following up? Like what we've done with a lot of different other services apart from apartment complexes is we're following up with management and making sure everything's getting done correctly. So now even the technician who's going out, And some will say, "Whoa, you're just checking our work or micromanaging," and it's like, hell yeah, we are. That's exactly what we're doing
Yeah.
because you know they're the customer. They're paying us. They're paying us a lot of money in some cases, and so yeah, we're gonna check behind you. And it's not because we don't necessarily trust you, but it's because if we have contact with a manager and that manager reaches, and answers and hears, they're going to start to say, holy crap, these guys actually care. It's not just another pest control company. We had a manager. I don't know if you remember. She actually never signed up with us, but she talked about the pest control company that she has. And she said every so many years we change pest control companies because they come in. They're super good. They do everything we ask, and then as time goes on, it dwindles down to less and less and less and less until we have to fire them, and then we find another company.
Yeah.
And it's little stuff like that that being in the industry and we're trying to change what we're looked at as, and we're trying to be better, and we have to take that into consideration and say, okay, how do we change so we don't do that in the future?
Hmm.
And so many people will look at that and say, well, they're stupid or they suck or they're mad or and in some cases that is how it is because we have some restaurants that are that way. But when it comes to managers and multiple managers talking about different things, we have to take note on that and say, okay, how can we change that? How can we be better so that when we come in and we are doing that initial contact and we have the contacts in there, that's how we learned what to do. Is we went through some of these mistakes and then we said, okay, next time, who's the manager? Who's their manager? Who do we need to contact? What's the proper way to set up this account? How do we have everything in order? What are the notes? We learned that over years and years and years of screwing up, and from other managers telling us companies that screwed up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's something that people need to pay attention to is that when these things are coming up, you can be upset and mad in the moment. That's fine. It hurts when you lose business, but make sure that you're changing for the next time so you don't lose that for that specific reason.
Yeah. Yeah. You really had a good point on the head. The reason I wanted to include this part in this episode was the importance to attention to detail. And we kind of throw that phrase out a lot, attention to detail and how crucial it is. But, let's take, we've been kind of talking about apartments. Let's go into like the restaurant side of it, for example. So let's say you're a route technician, you have a couple residential accounts, you have a couple restaurants or small businesses, liquor stores, things like that, gas stations on your route, and a lot of things that I can see can compound to cause a lot of issues in the future for growth. Or let's say you go to a restaurant and the instructions say, always text the manager when you arrive, make sure to collect payment from the front, leave a door tag so that way they can give it to the health inspector, always leave, a couple sticky traps. And this is your third or fourth time going there, and the manager's not there, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll pay you next time, or we're calling the payment." And then they said, "No, it's okay. You don't have to check those glue boards, or don't worry about it. You don't have to check that bait station back there." I've seen it firsthand where we're getting calls from the owner saying, "Why the hell do I have a past due balance for the last 3 months? You guys are supposed to be collecting the check. Why are there cockroaches coming in? You guys said you were supposed to do this. You guys said you've been servicing the fly light in the back, but I know it's been broken for 2 months. I'm done. I'm done with you and all the other you know what I mean? And it's just a compounding thing that can add up just from a lack of attention to detail on some of these more sensitive accounts that gets overlooked, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that it does happen so often. And that's what, we talk about all the time. That's what's so exciting about being in the industry that we're in is we're surrounded by so many lazy people
Yeah.
and media, really just the very little work that people are willing to put in to be exceptional is amazing. Because
Hmm.
if you just go out there and actually hold up on your part, it's amazing how fast the word spreads that you're good. I mean, especially when it comes into property management, in apartment complexes. If you do get into one and they just want to try you out on a small property, whatever it is, take advantage of it and do an excellent job consistently for a year.
Hmm.
And then you can go back to them and say, hey, look, I've been doing a great job for a year. I've cleaned up this property. I've done all these things. We've been in such great communication. Who do you know? Who's the next? What else can I do for you guys? And then word starts to spread really, really quickly. And we've seen it. We did it for one person. I actually thought she was pissed off. I didn't think she actually liked us at all.
Oh yeah,
Um,
right.
and, and then come to find out, she's actually like a regional over dozens of properties, and she sends me a list of every single property and all the managers' names and phone numbers to contact.
Saying
You know,
send these properties bids.
yeah, send them quotes.
Yeah,
And so that is what I'm talking about, and that's what we're talking about is when we say be detailed, be precise in what you're doing. The line of communication needs to be very wide open. You start to create something so awesome that they will always use you. And we are now getting calls, which is great, from properties that we don't even service, but they don't trust the company that's servicing them to do their specialty work. And I know you're going to hit on that in a little bit after we kind of get over setting up the account and everything, but that's what we're talking about is because you're so detailed, you start to gain so much traction at these properties and they start opening it up to you to take on everything.
yeah, definitely. I when we're getting on some of these newer properties, even when I'm there, if we've been there for years or months, in sales in general, a lot of the what I think about is how could I make this so stupidly easy for the customer that they don't even have to think about it, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And with that, charging them accordingly for it. I think there's kind of a gray area there where the people oversee where you're not bending over backwards for no reason, but you understand kind of what you can offer and the differences and the things that you offer and why the price point is attached to it. Um, a lot of these specialty accounts, they are, property managers over apartment complexes specifically, they have a laundry list of, of like evictions, vacant units, maintenance issues, their bosses coming in inspecting the property. A lot of times, the last thing they want to talk about is how a unit was insufficiently prepped or how this unit didn't do this correctly or how you couldn't get into this unit. So, what's helped me, and I think what's helped us on the business side of it, is being proactive in eliminating those mistakes before they happen to make it 10 times easier for the property managers to do business with us. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
find I find a really common theme that people light up when we offer it, but a lot of apartment or property managers, they are not really thrilled about dealing directly with tenants and residents when it comes to communicating timeframes or proper preparation or sanitation standards. And you'd be amazed at least some of the traction that we've gotten by being the professionals and stepping in and saying, hey, we will actually communicate with them. We'll schedule it with them. We'll set those expectations with them and report to you as we're doing it. And every single time, it's like, I didn't even know that was an option, is the response that we get.
It's not one until we make it one.
There we go. That's the point. Yeah.
Well, that's really the secret to, a lot of these business, guys, you get entrepreneurs, you get inventors, you get tech companies, you know what they're doing. It's really simple. We just are trying to bring it to our industry is you're finding something that somebody needs that they didn't know that they needed.
Right.
And it's that simple. They didn't know that someone could do that for them because no one's ever offered it. So when you start offering it, you start to become this unique beast in the industry that no one can even compete with because they're not prepared. And the great thing is, we can give this information out to everybody, listening to the podcast, here's your secret. Here's the secret sauce, right? It doesn't matter and it doesn't affect us because we've already been doing it for so long.
Hmm.
You're coming to the game late already. We're already way ahead of you. So it doesn't matter. We're already prepared for it. You got to go through all the learning curves now. We don't. We already went through them years ago. We're over it now, right? And the new learning curve that we're hitting and the new experiences, we're getting over those, and you're still a year behind us, 2 years behind us. So we're always going to be that year ahead, 2 years ahead. And that's that secret there. That is what it is. It's you're offering something that, they didn't know that was even being able to be offered. Even another one that we've decided to do, and I'll give this out as another secret to all these companies because it pissed me off when we were doing it, is we would essentially show up, we would say, we're here to treat, and the manager would say, oh, well, we're clean. We got no units. And the tech would say, awesome, have a great day. And he'd walk away and get in his truck and leave.
Hmm.
And it was awesome. We made $150, $160. And it was 5 minutes of our time, 10 minutes of our time, just talking to the manager. That's
Okay.
awesome. That's great. But what I saw is we're screwing the customer. We're not spraying any buildings. We're not taking down any spider webs. We're literally doing nothing for them. We're just leaving. And we're leaving early so the guy can get home early, the tech can get home early. And, that opens up so many possibilities for other companies to come in and say, hey, we'll actually stay and spray. We'll actually de-web. You don't have any units? Great. We'll stay. We'll do our job. We'll do, extra.
Hmm.
And we stay the allotted time that we're allowed to, and we do the extra. And no other company is going to do that. Even if they switch, they're going to come back because everybody else is lazy. They don't want to do that. They
Always.
want, yeah, they want the quick buck. They want to screw the customer and they want to run. And when they start to see that and they see that we're not doing that, it's amazing because then they stay on and they want to stay with us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's all good. And I appreciate you kind of diving into different stages too, because there's a lot of people who do listen from different parts in their journey of either running a pest control company or starting in the industry themselves. And maybe you're a technician who feels like they're stagnant and they don't know how they can offer more of a value. And if you do have sales opportunities or you do have commercial accounts, and you see some things that can be improved or some areas that you can provide more attention to detail in and provide a better service and have better payouts for those services. This is it. It's really no secret, and we're talking about it like it is like a secret sauce, but it's pretty straightforward. I kind of wanted to go over this to talk about growth and talk about how realistic it is just by little tweaks and changes, but it's really that simple.
It really is. But the big thing is the biggest problem I see with, guys getting into it. And I'm saying this with companies that have been around for 30 years that we looked
Yeah.
at purchasing, we dive into their books, we dive into their clientele, um, companies we acquired. Everybody sticks to residential. Everybody, all the small companies, they all stick to residential. They don't want to go outside of that.
Why?
Um, they're scared. They don't understand. You go into an apartment complex, you go into a storage facility, you go into anything that's bigger than a little gas station, and even sometimes that is scary because now what? Well, you're not just dealing with ants. You're not just dealing with spiders anymore. You can't just go and spray and pray.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that anymore. And so it gets scary. I remember we were terrified. We're looking at the convention center. We're looking at these massive buildings three combined, over 1 million square feet. And you're like, how do you take care of it? Like, what do you do? How do you do it? What's the secret here? What's this? It's all covered in dark and you don't know. You're scared of this thing because it's so big and massive. And then you step into it. And in our case, we stepped in and we actually got to see what, and I'll say the company because I don't care, is we got to see what Ecolab was doing in these big facilities. And you want to know what they're doing? Literally nothing.
They're not doing is what they're doing.
Yeah. And so I was so terrified and so, I mean, it was just this monster, right? Like, how are we? I got to handle it. I got to be the guy, front runner. Like, we can't screw this up. We got to be extra on everything. And then come to find out, these guys are doing the same crap as they're doing on a house or on a cabin. And it's like, you put one bait station and like some tin cats, like, I thought this was going to be more extravagant, right? Like, I thought you guys were going to be doing something else. No,
Right.
it's pretty minuscule and small. But what I'm going at and really getting into is so many people are scared of, well, what if there is a unit with bed bugs? I don't know how to treat them. So now what do I tell them? Find another company. And then I'm going to lose them anyway. Or cockroaches. I don't know how to take care of, I mean, I know how to take care of cockroaches in a house, but you do what most companies do and they treat a unit and then they just start spreading to all the units. And then they're like, oh crap, what do I do now?
Hmm.
And they start to step out of their bounds and they get away with it in some cases. I had, there was a tech that worked for, here in the past when we first started and before I even owned it. And this dude he was confident. He was an idiot, but he was confident.
Hmm.
I mean, he was like, I know, I believed a lot of the crap he said. I mean, I was just knocking doors and I was asking him questions. And then, come to find out as I started learning, I'm like, dude, this dude was full of shit. He didn't even know what he was doing. And he had apartment complexes on and managers. And he had so many people sucked into this unrealistic pest control idea that we had to break it.
Yeah.
And it was, and it sucked, but we had to kind of break that reality. And they were, well, this guy said this. And it's like, well, yeah, but it doesn't work that way. He lied, you
Yeah.
know? And we look really stupid, but he lied. But so many people are afraid. And that's why they don't step into that. They don't know how to take care of rodents. They don't know how to take care of cockroaches. They don't know how to take care of bed bugs. They don't know how to take care of a multifamily unit. They don't know how to take care of a big warehouse. And so that terrifies them to even step into it 30 years later in a business. You know, usually those owners are very clear. We're here to take care of your general pests. We will service you, but remember, we will not do anything else because they didn't want to learn. They don't care to learn. They don't want to step out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to hit on before we go on our last topic on this episode for the growth side of it. You know, from what I'm hearing, it's basically getting reps in, getting repetition, doing the
Yeah.
thing that's uncomfortable or unfamiliar. Asking some of those hard questions to yourself and your team. But I know you've kind of been through the different stages of it, so for a company who kind of might be barely dabbling into some very light commercial but wants to take that next step, but they're afraid. I mean, what's a generalized piece of advice you'd give them? Is it along the lines of just get your reps in and you don't know until you fail a couple times, or is it kind of asking for advice or going to other outside sources? What would you recommend to those smaller kind of companies that are looking to do that?
I don't remember who said it. Um, and I'll have to look them up. So I'm not going to take credit on this one, but whoever said it, it's the quality of the question gets you the best answer. And that is what we took, and that's what I've pretty much lived by getting into this, and into pest control. I knew nothing, but I knew how to ask a question and I knew where to ask the question. And so the quality of the question and the quality of person you're asking is going to give you all the information. And there is one from Ford. Um, And he was in court and he essentially said, they asked him a bunch of questions and all this stupid stuff. And he stopped them and said, hey, I can press a button at my desk and I can ask that question to anybody, to these engineers and everything that know everything. He's like, so I just need to know who to ask and I can get you that answer. I don't
Yeah.
need to know it. I don't have to know it. And that's what people have to understand. You're getting into these bigger things. You're getting into bigger apartment, bigger buildings, more units, whatever it may be, the structure of your business. You start going to conferences, which we've been screaming about for the past years since we started the podcast. And the educational side of it is don't step into it without educating yourself or being willing to be, to learn, and you don't have to necessarily make the mistake. That's the cool thing. You don't have to go through that learning curve. Is you just got to learn from someone who already knows it. And once you learn from someone who already knows it, you can come back and put it to practice. I mean, we did it. We did it
Yeah.
with all the wildlife, things that we're getting into, a lot of the different bird stuff that we're getting into. We didn't know anything, but we knew who to ask and we knew how to ask it.
Yeah.
And that's really all it is. So my biggest advice is the quality of question and the quality of person you're asking the question to.
Wow. No, that's good. It's really good. My mind went to listening, like actively listening to the details and what's actually being said, which kind of ties along to, you'll get to that point by asking the quality questions to the quality person. So, no, I think that's great. I think that's great. Last part in this episode, we wanted to go over, this has kind of been about commercial apartment or sensitive accounts from the acquisition to the actual sales themselves, but tying it into our growth sort of, we've had a growth focus over the past few episodes in the new year, but there's so much opportunity that's on the board when you get into these restaurants, gas stations, hotels, motels, multifamily, unit facilities that are obviously there, but when you deliver on what you say you're going to do and they trust you to take care of their problems, the opportunities absolutely skyrocket. I mean,
Yeah.
since I've been, kind of over the technician side of the business, I've seen our biggest growth potential has been from obviously the new acquisitions and the new buildings and complexes we're getting on are great, but it's the ones we're currently on that we're inspecting units for, and they're calling us out for rodent issues in a unit that their maintenance guys couldn't take care of, and they just found out that we can take care of this rodent stuff, and how fast and how quickly success stories actually spread. This is why I want to touch on this topic, because a lot of these apartment managers and a lot of these communities, they talk. They're not a single entity. They're not just over that one property and that's it. It's typically a community under an umbrella property management company that should give you a shoe in for growth if that's what you're after. Does that make sense?
Well, and on top of that is there's a lot. So just like we have NPMA, we have your local PCOC, like here, so the Pest Control Operators of California.
Oh yeah.
There's Pest Control Operators of Atlanta and Texas, and yeah, I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, every state has them, and there's probably cities that have their even smaller ones, and there's a lot of companies that are intertwined with those associations. My point of saying that is apartments are the same way, guys. It's not just us. We're a very small part of a big world, okay? And so when you're stepping into the apartments, there's a California Apartment Association. I think it is CAA. And that's exactly what they're called. And I think there's multiple associations. And that's what people need to know is even if you're stepping into just an apartment complex by themselves, and it's just a single owner, you would be shocked that they're probably a part of an association because of all the contracts that they'll provide and lease agreements and everything that they're able to use and all the documentation that they provide, just like NPMA does, right? They provide a ton of different documentation that you can use and apply into your company if you're part of their association. Apartments do that same thing. So not only can you get into one where they have a property management company that are managing multiple types of properties, and in some cases that we're dealing with commercial buildings, with residential homes, with apartment complexes. You also can step into one where they're in an association, and if you talk to them, they'll tell you, "Oh, hey, I'm part of this association." Or if you're like, "Hey, can I see your bedbug addendum that you have to have on your lease agreement?" And they pull it out, it'll typically say what association they're a part of at the top because they printed it off the website. And I've seen that multiple times sitting down with some of these managers. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, "Oh, hey, we're part of that association too." So keeping that in mind is it can start to get you into something so much bigger. And those associations do luncheons. They have their conventions and things like that you can actually go and be a part of, and sponsor. Now, some of them died down because of COVID, at least the one in California did, and it hasn't bounced back since. At least I haven't seen any emails come through, but they were doing a ton of things, and they were bringing in a ton of property managers and owners because they were all part of it. Well, it looks like we may have lost Aaron on this last stretch of the episode. But really, what he has been getting at throughout the entire episode is your growth plan on where we're going and where you're going and how that can really introduce a lot. We've had it in past episodes where you can step in and you can start. Growth doesn't mean go find a new customer all the time, right? Apartment complexes is one of many, many places that we can actually do pest control and that we can grow in. But these commercial buildings, and as you start to offer more services, going to your current customers is a massive way to start to grow organically without spending a massive amount of advertising dollars or getting on a huge sales team or spending a lot of time on your own going out and doing cold calls. Use the resources that are literally in your back pocket. And it doesn't always work out in your favor, especially when you start to do mediocre work. But when you start executing on a high level and consistently, one, it gets easier over time. You start to create a habit and really make yourself become better. And as that habit starts to starts to create and become you and your company and the culture and who you are, bringing on multiple other companies and starting really to expand into other industries and other buildings and things like that. Sorry, not industries, but industries as you're going into restaurants, into gas stations, into warehouses, storage unit, apartment complexes. That starts to expand what you're able to get and grab from. A normal apartment complex that's paying you $1,200, $100 per service once a month, and they're paying you $1,200. Well, the second that you start to be able to do inspections for them and you start adding on bedbug treatments and cockroach treatments, well, that $1,200 soon turns into $3,000 and $4,000, $5,000. And so you could literally quadruple what you're making off of some of these customers overnight. And don't look at it as, "Oh, I'm stealing from them," or "I'm robbing," or they would have paid someone anyway. And we had that experience. We stepped into a state building and they paid out thousands and thousands of dollars for bedbug treatments, and we came in and actually eliminated them and helped out huge. And it just ended up turning into really we saved them and we saved them money. We weren't hurting, we were helping. And so understand that and get some of these things into your head. And that's really a big thing. And I'll go personal, for me is that's what held me back is really my own mindset of I'm here, but I don't want to steal from these people. I don't, that's a lot of money. And you got to get that out of your head. You're creating a better value and people are willing to pay for it. And if it's hard to understand that way or to get into your head, understand it in the way of buying an iPhone. Do you need an iPhone? Is an iPhone, a brand new iPhone, going to save your life? Is that going to make that big of a difference from the iPhone that you had that's 3 years old? Probably not. But you're willing to spend $1,500 on it, where Apple probably spends couple $100 to make it with all their expenses, and they turn around and sell it for $1,500, $1,600 for the best ones. They don't care. They understand the value that they're bringing and the value that they bring, and they're not going to negotiate on that. And we need to stay our ground as, pest control professionals, as we need to understand as we're stepping in and going after our current customers and growing with our current customers is we're looking to grow and expand. And here are the services that we're trying to actually get into. And because of that, this is the added money and the added value that they get and the added money that you get for that service. So keep that in mind. But I hope this episode, with some of the technical difficulties that we ran into, you still got, a good amount of information and understanding of how you can expand your business and how to really start to step into, something bigger than yourself. And get past those learning curves, get past those needs, understand and start to take a step back and listen to the customer's needs. Listen to those people's needs as you're getting into a different type of building or a different type of industry, stepping out of residential into commercial. What are you solving for them? How are you making a difference? And because of that, you're going to bring so much more value. And that's going to help you get to that next level. But I hope everything helped. Remember, reach out to us. We're always trying to get in, questions for the Q&A. If you have any questions or even comments about this episode, about apartment complexes or commercial, properties in general, please reach out. Even if you have questions about how to get in or stories of what you did to get in, please let us know. We'd love to share it on the podcast and give that information out to everybody. We are a small industry and we're trying to grow and we're trying to be better. And hopefully that it can start with us, the newer generation, the younger generation getting in. As we start to see some of the older ones get out, we're the ones, really creating the new path, and let's do it right. So please reach out. You can go on our website, DNA Pest Podcast. You can email us, dnapestpodcast@gmail.com. And you can always find us on Instagram. Thanks again for listening to the DNA Pest Control Podcast.